Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and our guest this evening is Stuart Gardner, attorney at law, and bon vivant and man about town. And the issue we want to talk about is Kenosha. And as we are recording this show, it's about 5 days since the trial was over, and Kyle Riittenhouse was acquitted on 5 of the charges, and 1 of the charges was thrown out. And surprise, surprise, Stuart and I agree that if we were on the jury, we would have voted the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I want to reiterate that. We're on the same side on the particular verdict. It does fall within the self-defense statutes. We had talked about this before. I'm terrified about the verdict because I think the country is a powder keg. I think right now the voices that are heard are the hard right and the hard left, and they're not listening to each other. And I think you just declared open season on protesting. And I think that people are going to go into crowds with guns feeling justified to find themselves some trouble and take out people.
Well, I think that the problem is a great deal of frustration that every time there's an incident, there's some bad things going on and things need to be fixed. But we all of a sudden have a riot that used to be a protest, and all sorts of nasty things are happening to communities that just don't recover from it. And people are getting frustrated, I think, with the administrations that won't put the police on the street or the National Guard on the street if that's what it takes to keep it from getting out of hand.
I'm all for order, and I'm not, I totally respect a president or a leader that says, look, I understand you have the right to do this, but it's turning into looting. It's turning into things that we don't want as a society, and I got to put guns on the street. I think there's a bigger issue, and I think that when there are mass communications of, look, there's a war on Christmas. Your kids are being subject to the gay agenda. They're being taught to hate themselves as white people through critical race theory. I think there is a drumbeat of things coming into people thinking that their very lives are in danger. Yeah. And I think a lot of it's, pardon my language, BS. Yeah. And I think it's creating a really bad expose of what's going on in the United States.
Well, I think, as you mentioned earlier, that there is a little bit of truth to a lot of these claims. And this little bit of truth is getting blown up way beyond proportion and is taken as the only issue. And I think, well, as we've had a discussion with Walt before the show, that Congress cannot agree on anything. They're at loggerheads with each other, and I think that reflects a lot of what you're talking about that's going on in the country. There is separate camps that cannot see any common ground, and they won't work towards any common ground, and the only solution is bring out the heavy hitters.
Well, I agree. I'm on the show a lot. I used to be on there a lot, and we used to talk about how, and we had joked about this, where it's always the left's problem, or the liberals are doing something wrong, or Obama's doing something wrong. I got a quote here from Madison Cawthorn. He's the Republican. He's I believe he's not a member of the Senate, member of the House of Representatives from North Carolina. And his quote was, he posted a video of to include him and his supporters to, yes, go ahead and be armed and be dangerous. I think talk like that's dangerous. I think talk like that is inciting violence to a group that's already inciting. And I know I don't want to bring this all about Donald Trump, but here's a guy who said, oh, it's okay to rough up the protesters. That's okay. It's okay to punch him at my meeting because he's saying something, and I'll pay your legal bills. I think when the Republican Party decided when they decided to fall in love with Trump because of his numbers, because of his, maybe like a lot of his policies, I don't know, but when they said, you know what, we're not going to comment on these other violent things, I think it's escalating out of control. Now, I'm sure you could probably say the same things about some people on the left, but I think this started when all of a sudden it was fair game to say things about people, and fair game to say it's okay to beat someone up. It's fair game to do that, and I think people are taking a license and doing it.
Well, I think this is the problem with the social media. And there was a whistleblower that came out of the woodwork not too long ago, and she was pointing out that the way the social media is set up is that they are trying to get eyeballs.
Yes.
And they find that if you have a very controversial subject, it drags in more eyeballs than something calm and peaceful. And there are algorithms in the system
Yes.
that search for this kind of stuff and emphasize it and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until everybody thinks, oh, I've heard that so many times from so many different places, it must be true.
Yes. And you're only getting, and it's exactly what I was going to say. You're in an algorithm that you're only going to get, like, this, what TikTok is, right? It's short videos and stuff. And I just like the cat videos, right? I try to stay away from the other stuff. And literally, I'm on sometimes, and it's cat video, cat video, cat video, cat video, because it knows that's the algorithm I want. And I think that when you're hard right or hard left, you're right. You're only hearing that. You're only hearing that one side. But part of this discussion wasn't, should we break up Facebook? Should we break up these big companies? And I think discussion has to be said about somehow regulating these things, that there's got to be some sort of, this is a fairness doctrine, right? And I think these algorithms circumvent the fairness doctrine.
Well, you get into the algorithm stuff, and my alma mater is running a 3-session show on AI and ethics.
Yep.
And one of the issues that we got into on that was talking about a thing called Compass, which is an algorithm that the courts use to determine, is somebody going to be a perpetual criminal, or are they going to turn their life around?
Yeah.
And they go through all of this stuff, and they start to look at some of the data, and the data is biased.
Yeah, of course it is.
And, well, of course it is that's a little bit too quick.
Sure.
But you look at the 137 questions that a particular prisoner is asked when they're arrested, and there's nothing in there that looks obvious to be biased. You don't ask them if they're African American or they're Hispanic or whatever, but somehow or other the algorithm comes out that way. And one of the problems that shows up is that when you're doing one of these studies, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, you end up with a data set. And you divide the data set in half randomly, different pieces, different places.
Sure.
One half is your test case.
Yep.
One half is your education case.
Gotcha.
And when you finish with your education case and you got your algorithm, you're supposed to run it against the test case, and you should see things like that.
Right.
And why didn't that happen? You get into those kinds of things that we end up with a system that's in the books, and everybody thinks, oh, it's on the computer, it must be good. And it isn't.
Well, everyone's I hear what you're saying, and I think everyone is trying to use, especially, I don't want to go to COVID, but even with, you're trying to use scientific data to figure stuff out, right? And what they have figured out is that, more often than not, we can come up with a really good odds scheme. I don't like the ones that deal with just people. I don't mind doing it with baseball. I don't mind doing it with diseases. I don't mind doing it with things. But when you're dealing with people's lives, in other words, their criminal life or their personal life, I don't think it works. I think you're right. I think the data gets lost and whatnot. I just, I going back to Kenosha, I think that, I don't know how it's going to be done, but this country's got to find a way to get together and work out our difference peaceably. Or the next time, we talked a little about the Ahmaud Arbery case that's going on right now, which is another case of self-defense. And, I don't know what's going to happen there. I can, it's got some different connotations, but I could see a jury going, he was trying to steal the gun, even though you chased after him first with the gun, and that's a reasonable self-defense. I'm afraid that things are going to explode.
Well, I think in that particular case, there's a lot of states, and I don't know about this particular one, that have a thing. If you start the problem, and you end up claiming self-defense after the fact, oh no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Wisconsin obviously doesn't have that statute.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is another part of the problem, but we just don't have uniform statutes.
Yeah.
And you get into the argument of how big has government got to be, and how far-reaching do these laws have to be, how uniform do they have to be, and there's all sorts of issues like, can you carry a gun across a state line?
Right.
So there's a lot of disconnects
Right.
that are lost in this game of states' rights.
I'm concerned about the perceptions that this has made. I wrote an article, remember I used to write for the Beverly paper, and it was about the Fourth Amendment, right? You have a right to be safe and secure in your person's place of effects.
Yeah.
No unreasonable search and seizure, right?
Yeah.
And it was a big deal back in the 1700s because they would come into your house, they go, aha, we found it, and now you got to say, well, you have to have a reasonable suspicion that crime is going on, right? And I said it wasn't so much the law, but people's ideas. It's the cop of the street, the FBI agent, all this kind of stuff that actually believe you have that right? They believe you have the right to not be unreasonably searched and seized. I think we're losing. People are losing the sentiment on the street is that you don't have the right to protest, or you don't have the right to to be outside during a violent protest and not be subject to violence.
Well, I think that's the issue that comes down to is, if you're outside and you're in a protest, screaming and hollering all you want, waving signs, whatever it is, fine. But once you cross the line and you start to block the streets and block traffic, or decide that, okay, we're going to take it out on the businessman down on the corner who has nothing to do with this, and he's got some pretty nice TV sets in there. I'd like to have one. Down go the windows, in go the people, that'll come the TV sets. I mean, this is the line that gets crossed, and all of a sudden, people can't say that, hey, that's not really a protest anymore. That's a riot.
No, I agree, and I will never defend looting or violence. What they would say is that it is a protest. It's a protest against the system that's against us. It's injustices, and then you might disagree. It's not really a protest against injustice. It's some guys trying to operate a store, but like the ones that will say, we don't have anything in our neighborhood. We're not destroying the stores in our neighborhood because there aren't any good stores in our neighborhood. We're coming to
not anymore. Yeah.
And I agree, and I don't defend it, and I'll never defend it. But it doesn't. I mean, there's big companies, there's corporations. I'm terrified. I don't know if you know, recently in Nordstrom's or something, one of the malls in San Francisco, they had like a 200-person looting. Like 200 people came in, all with masks on, and like stole a couple $1 million worth of merchandise. Like, our society, why have if we're not going to be civil to each other, why have a civilization? That's what we don't care anymore. None of it matters.
Yeah, well, that resorts back to the fact that sooner or later everybody's going to have a gun. And what was it, the Mackenzies, I think the name were? They were out on their front lawn.
Oh, the guy in St. Louis.
In St. Louis, yeah, waving guns. Well, the thing that gets very distorted is, well, they were waving guns at these protesters. Well, the protesters broke down their front gate and were marching through their property. And I think this is part of the problem, that you don't get the whole story, so you don't know how to interpret it or reflect on it and react to it. And I think one of the things that's been really disappointing to me is that just about every one of these riots, we've had race riots for years, and always there's a commission afterwards to look into it, and we're going to analyze it and figure out what happened. And they always come up with the same answers, and they do nothing about it.
Yeah.
And I think this is the kind of frustration that is building up that's leading to the kind of issues that you're seeing, that somebody's going to take a gun in their hands. And there's this kid in Illinois who hears about a riot going on and some bad things that are going on in Kenosha, and he thinks he's going to go there and help out. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
He heard the carrion call, and off he went to defend the stores.
Yep.
And gets caught in a situation that, depending upon whose article you read, he's either acting recklessly or he's an extremely good soldier.
Yeah.
Whatever you like. But it's this frustration that is building up with the government didn't do anything. They let it go too far, and somebody wants to take it into their own hands to sort it out.
George, where is the middle ground? And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I see a guy like I'm not in love with Joe Biden. Let's be clear, right? Yeah. He's okay. I don't think he's a great president. I think no disrespect, he's a little too old. I think we need a little younger president. Yeah. But where is the counterbalance for a guy like Donald Trump? And I've got no animosity for the guy, but I do know that he does things like still argues that it was a stolen election, even though there were 60 court cases. Do you know his lawyer, whatever her name was, I can't think of the woman's name, but she's getting sued, right, for all these false election claims, right? And you know what her defense is? Her defense is that no reasonable person would believe the claims I'm making. So she's out in the public eye going, Trump was cheated and this machine's not working and we had 100 fake votes here, and she's convincing you and me that believe her, right?
Yeah.
But then when she gets sued, she goes, you know what, no one should believe my stupidity. Why aren't we calling that out? What about the was Paul Gosar, the guy who put him killing one of the squad people? It was either
Oh yeah.
and only 2 members of the Republican Party said that was wrong. All the other members kept their mouth shut. Now, I'm sure they think it's wrong, but they don't want to say anything because of Donald Trump. He put a meme of him killing another senator or killing another congressperson, and they're like, "Oh, that's fine." That's not fine. So, like, I don't get it.
Well, what I interpret that to mean is that there is so much loyalty to the party that only 2 members would speak out against something that a different member of the party did. If it's one of our guys and he did it, it's right.
But isn't that wrong?
I understand that, but
yeah.
that's the problem. I'm not trying to defend it. I'm trying to analyze it and say, what is causing this kind of thing?
Yeah.
And I think it's the whole idea that in order to get a bill through Congress, everybody in the party's got to vote either for it or to prevent it. Everybody's got to vote against it.
Yeah.
And it's this whole idea of the party whip that gets all the votes. And whatever that has to say to somebody, we'll get you another school, we'll get you another post office, whatever they have to bribe them with, log rolling, whatever you want to call it, they do it just to maintain these blocks.
So here's the scary next step about what you're saying, right? What's happening is our system's not working, right? It's too log jammed, and we've got too many people. So our choices right now are dictatorship or communism, because both of those things can get stuff done, right?
Oh yeah.
You go to Belarus, you gotta go through Levchenko, whatever his name is. You go to China, the party that wants to do it gets it done.
Yeah.
Here, there's debate about it, and nothing gets done, and people are frustrated with it.
Yeah.
And I think there's, I think.
Well, what you're saying is we need leadership.
Yeah.
And Joe Biden or Trump, or pick anyone you want. When was the last time we had somebody in charge that was a leader?
I don't see either party giving the other party's head even a chance.
Yeah.
I think the last time, we all got behind someone. I don't know, Richard Nixon, maybe before he was impeached, or maybe Lyndon B. Johnson. I'm trying to think of even who. Clinton they liked him, but there was a hardcore Republicans didn't like him. George Bush was a pretty decent president, but the lefties didn't like him. And then you had Obama, which caused a whole world of problems.
Yeah. And so I think we're getting to the point of we don't have a Washington anymore, or even an Eisenhower. Somebody that everybody says, yeah, they did something before they were president that gives them some credibility.
Sure, street cred, yeah.
And most of these politicians come up through the ranks, and all of a sudden they appear on the stage, and, well, what do you know about him? He's got a good machine.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of votes, and he's got a lot of money.
Yeah. So
that's what gets people in. And all of a sudden they find out that, geez, they got a problem. What are we going to do about it? Well, I mean, Joe Biden in Afghanistan, we'll hear about that forever.
Yeah. I mean, what we don't have, we're gonna go off on tangents, but term limits. But they're not going to vote for term limits because they'd have to vote for it or pull the money out of politics. Once money's in something, it's like, it's the same question with guns. Guns are ubiquitous. Even if you made guns illegally, they're not going to be illegal. There's a trillion of them in the country.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible. So we have to find a way to work with these things. And I'm with you. I don't know how it's going to happen. And I have young kids, and they're not the protesting type. They're the let's go to college and buckle down, and they don't like things. And I'm terrified. If there was a protest, I would tell them not to go. Not because I don't believe in their right to do it, but because of my concern of.
It's going to get out of hand.
Yeah, it's going to get out of hand no matter what. People feel justified. And you know what? And these claims, they sound reasonable, and there's got to be we need a better system to outline the appropriate conduct in these various institutions.
Well, one of the ones that really surprised me is the Charlottesville.
Yeah.
And there is a group, they call themselves Take Back the Right. They are protesting tearing down a statue of, I think it was Robert E. Lee.
Yeah.
So they went out and they played the ball the way it's supposed to be played. They got a permit. They were assigned Emancipation Park.
Yep.
And that's where they had their rally.
Right.
Another group says, we don't like what you're doing. We want to have a counter protest. They got a permit and they had a park 2 blocks away.
Yeah. How'd that work out?
Exactly. And all of a sudden, where did the riot take place?
Yeah.
In Emancipation Park. So this counter-protester didn't feel like they were getting enough coverage, didn't get their message across. They decided to do something about it.
Yeah.
And they're still fighting over that one.
Yeah. Too many people feel that violence is justified. I mean, didn't they just do a survey that said something like 40% of Republicans and 30% of Democrats said that they might have to resort to violence to protect their way of life?
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
I mean, I think it's terrifying.
Yeah. Well, you think about some of these riots, and a couple of them, they were finding people were trying to burn down an apartment house with people still in it.
Yeah.
And they were blocking the fire trucks from getting there to put it out.
Yeah.
I mean, you get into a situation like that, hey.
So wait, so what's the takeaway from Kenosha then? Because we're all we've done is extrapolate to Armageddon. Is there, and I'll come to the bright side, is there a way that we can figure this thing out? And I usually had faith in it. Because I love this country. It's where I keep all my stuff. I love this place.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to sound doom and gloom. I'm a positive guy, but I don't get it.
Well, I think part of the thing is that you can't wait until the last minute to get involved in something, because there's too many dies have been cast, or whatever euphemism you want to use, that things are rolling and they're heading in a direction. And once the ship gets moving, it's a heck of a tough job to turn it around, or even turn it to a slightly different direction. So it's a matter, I think, of you got to get in early and get your voice in.
Yeah.
And I think most people are reasonable. And you've got a lot of assets, both mental and physical, that are in good shape, and you can do something with them. But at the last minute, this wave is rolling, and you can't stop it.
So I agree, George, that most people are reasonable. My daughter goes to school in Ohio.
Yeah.
And I stay right out. So she goes to Oberlin, and I stay right outside in this city called Elyria. The people are the nicest people in the world in Ohio. Ohio's like one of those kind of blue-red states that they're trying to push, 50-50 or whatever. Yeah. And they are the most kind, generous people. Even on the street, I meet them. But, they're getting a different beat of a drum than we're getting. They're getting the election was stolen. There was fraud. There was this, and I don't know how to control the truth anymore or control the lies. Vladimir Lenin said the truth is subordinate to the class struggle, and I believe it. I think that if you're a Trumpian or you're a hardcore left liberal, the truth doesn't matter. It doesn't. What matters is how are you going to get people to rally to your cause?
Yeah. Well. It was a situation where the Democratic Party used to be the party of the working man.
Yeah.
And they abandoned him.
Yeah.
And right now, the Democratic Party is the party of the fairly well-educated liberal college graduates.
Sure.
And the people that rallied behind Trump were ones that he said, hey, I'm for you.
Yeah.
And nobody else would say, I'm for you. So he got their support. And he is an example of how rambunctious you can get. And he got an awful lot of free coverage out of the liberal press trying to mock him. but in the same time, they're getting his message out. They
put
got his name out.
Put him on TV a lot. I agree.
Yeah, so he played the game.
Yeah, I think the only way we're going to be able to calm this thing down, to assuage the situation, is for party leaders to come out. And I'm going to pick on the Republican Party. When Marjorie Taylor Greene says Jews have space lasers that start fires, someone's going to say, you know what, Marjorie, you're wrong. Stop talking. You're crazy. Or the other guy. Or if Omar says something bad, I don't really watch her or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the party leaders. But Trump doesn't do it. I don't
Trump
see
doesn't do it. Biden doesn't do it.
They don't do it. They don't care.
None of them do it.
Someone's got to come out and call these people on the ridiculous statements that they make, and you cannot make violent statements. You said anything.
No,
you
you're
get
getting
threats.
back to the point of what Trump was doing.
Please.
That he was making a lot of noise and getting a lot of coverage, and everybody thinks they can do that too. But unfortunately, we got to the point where we've had a half hour of fun.
Oh.
And you like to finish it off? Talk to the camera?
Sure. I mean, the takeaway, the show is about the takeaway of Kenosha, and I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to say, look, as a society, we got to find a way to communicate, like me and George, like this show does sometimes, like you do with your friends that you disagree with. There's got to be middle ground. If you're a big Trump supporter, know that people don't like him because they think he's dangerous. If you're a big Biden supporter, know that people don't like him because they think he's dangerous. We're all Americans. How's that one for you?
Yeah, that'll do it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening. And as you'll see in the credits when they roll up, if you've got a different opinion, let me know. Send me an email, and there's space for you at the table to get your thoughts in front of everybody else. And thanks again for joining us, and stay tuned. We'll do more of this fun.